Welcome everyone. Welcome to 3 Steps to Kayaking. This is a virtual community gathering designed to help motivate enthusiasts develop as proficient sea kayakers, hosted by a crackerjack team of TRAK pilots here at TRAK HQ in Nanaimo. This program will help support you getting into the sport of sea kayaking, take your practice to the next level. We're going to focus on 3 basic elements throughout all of these programs to help build a solid foundation for sea kayaking. We're going to help with the understanding the tools required to get you into the seat of a kayak with the right gear. We're going to help you develop skills to ensure that you're developing solid habits as a sea kayaker. And we're going to really sea personship to help you understand best practices in the dynamic environment of sea kayaking to be able to really operate in a safe and fun way. So we invite you to eddy out with like-minded paddlers in this community and discuss some of the topics we love most. I am Hans Trupp. I am a longtime TRAK pilot and host of today's show with you. This show is hosted by TRAK Kayaks, of course, the makers of the ultimate portable sea kayak. And we're living our value and purpose of Life Unleashed by bringing this program to you. Joining us today to help us with that mission is Simon Naylor, a British adventure expedition leader, TRAK pilot, and most recently, the Director of Operations at TRAK Kayaks. Welcome, Simon.
Hi, Hans. Good to see you again.
Excellent. Today's subject is expedition leadership and the transference to sea kayak skills. What a fantastic subject. So I want to thank all of you for joining us, those that are watching live, and also those that may be watching this broadcast as a replay. We are recording this session, and we invite questions to come into the chat on Zoom. We'll address those as they come in, and folks will have had an opportunity to lead with questions in advance of this. Many of you have offered questions, and so some of those we've baked into this interview leading. So it's not too late. Bring in the questions. So, as an introduction, Simon, you've been described as a water athlete. You're educated as an Army aircraft engineer who transferred into the Royal Army Physical Training Corps and developed into an adventurous training and resilience leadership professional within the military context. Really fantastic. You've also served as a corporate senior manager at Canadian Pacific Railway. You're a dedicated father and proud husband, a definitive family man.
Definitely now, yes. Getting that way.
Incredible. So, you've recently moved to Nanaimo, headquarters of TRAK HQ. And so we're currently broadcasting from British Columbia. You seem to be from away, as they say in these parts. Share with us a sense of where you grew up and set the stage for your range of experience from kind of this sea to the highest summits.
Yeah, I think growing up in a spectacular place, Wales, much like some parts of the island, Vancouver Island, and many other places around the world, that the sea, it becomes part of your fabric, it becomes part of your upbringing. And when you move away from it, to the south of England and to other places, the draw is always there. So maybe, your heart and your soul, especially for me, was always back to the sea. So really fortunate to grow up in a place called Carnarvon, North Wales. Largest castle in Europe, so 1,000 years worth of Anglo-Saxon architecture, and then 2,000 years worth of Roman architecture in the same town. So a great place for any boy, any person, any girl with an active mind and an active personality to really explore and exploit and have nature in your garden, plus some spectacular history in the architecture. So that was a great place to grow up.
Sounds fantastic and full of fantasy for an active imagination.
Yes, I think even into early teens, the town would let all the local kids play in this. It's the largest castle in Europe, and you could play in there freely every weekend. So you could go in, play in Manhunt, tag, tick, all in these ancient 1,000-year-old walls and nooks and crannies was a great place to be. And then the sea, and the Menai Straits right behind it, and to the Isle of Anglesey. So yeah, great spot.
Awesome. Well, you're clearly an adventurer from sea to summits. How did you first get acquainted to the sea, and what contributed to your confidence in the water that you have now?
Yeah, I think initially as a swimmer, so like probably most success as a swimming athlete as a young kid, and small town, great history, but then how do you sometimes break out of that kind of area? And swimming wasn't a platform to do that, but it gave me probably such a great release of energy and confidence through water. So water was what sort of connected me to me, and I got some good success earlier on. And then what was nice and topical was even at 10 years old, I become like the youngest athlete to do the Menai Straits swim. It's an annual race, goes across from Anglesey to the mainland, and people who know sea kayaking know the Menai Straits was often Admiral Nelson's test. She had to sail a longboat through those treacherous waters. So there I am as 10 years old trying to get into this race with the ambition of being A, one of the youngest to do it, B, do it successfully, and kind of in the back of my mind, C, do it safely, with some knowledge of what the tide was doing in my local area. So there we are on the dockside, 10 years old, goose fatted up, wintergreen jelly all over your body, ready for the pretty frigid waters, like the 11, 12 degrees, and still you're in the tiniest of little suits, and you're going to do this cross straight swim at the high tide and slack. 1 minute to go, the conditions aren't favourable, and they cancel the race. So as a 10-year-old boy, with a sense of adventure and a thirst for doing things a little bit differently and a little bit out there, at that age, it was a really good lesson straight away. Well, things aren't right. The conditions aren't favourable. Even at the last minute, an event, it's not a huge event, to cancel and to ferry people back along the coastline, no small feat. That was a really good sort of lesson, even that early on. Fast forward 1 year, I'm now 11 years old, and the race is on again. So I'm like, okay, second year running, I'm going to do the race. Conditions aren't great again, and then this time, another good lesson. It was about changing the plan. So the plan is to cross the straits, in your swimsuit with your goose fat on, and across you go, and it's this straight race. Conditions aren't great again, so the same day, the equinox tide, all these factors that come in and start to just embed some seamanship in your psychology. So the change of plan was, okay, there won't be a crossing, there will be an A to B and a B to A. So it's a long shore way. Race proceeds, off you go, and I would like to say it was without incident, but I swam into a boat, another safety boat almost went over me. All those things that you learn later in kayaking that to look out for, again embedded almost as a young child, as an adolescent child, and I'm learning these sea lessons literally in my backyard. So
you experienced some of those decision-making elements and things that develop good judgment early on. So you got
really
that.
Good.
You got that.
And just hearing people and seeing their judgment and going, I don't have to agree with the call, but I would respect it and then so follow on. So.
Well, what specific either decision-making lessons or expedition lessons did these formative wet adventures provide? What exactly were the takeaways from that? I
think, keeping positive was really, as a 10-year-old with an ambition to be the youngest ever, to have that slip away really quickly with nothing to do with your preparation, nothing to do with your ability, but the conditions dictating. And that was a real good lesson. Yeah. So conditions telling you to change your plan. That's what really stayed with me.
So learning to accept that and maintain a positive mindset through that was critical.
Yeah, that was growing, definitely a growing thing then. There was some emotions to deal with, some ego to let go of, and some things to grow from. But the concept of doing the right thing when the conditions are telling you to do something else.
Let's advance that all the way into the sea kayaking thing. And you're a BCU accredited sea kayaker. Describe your progression into sea kayaking from those formative years and your journey through the BCU accreditation process.
And it went pretty smooth for me. I think So joining the military in the sort of early 90s, tail end of sort of the Bosnian conflict. The army had already had an outward bound type of program in the whole joint services, the Army, Navy, and the Air Force. So the outward bound program instilled in this adventurous training aspect was something that was really attractive to me. So I wanted an education, I wanted trade, so I go and study aircraft engineering with them. So that's a really good way to get supported and sort of financial help to grow out of the situation that we were in. So Army was like my platform to succeed. Mm-hmm. And then pretty early on, what I learned with the Army was you don't have to stay in one pigeonhole. So once you're an aircraft engineer, it doesn't end there. There's a whole offering of development, and I think without sounding like a recruiting tool for the military, because there's a real nice link to that sort of later on. I could see the runway. I could see, well, this is a place that I can grow, and they're going to help me to grow. And by growing, I'll also, there'll be reward in promotion and development and a whole bit to it.
Yeah.
So transfer to the physical training corps. And on the way there's a few fundamental elements you have to achieve. And this is for everybody.
And so you're talking about right now how you managed to create a role for yourself that blended your outdoor recreational skills development into this adventure training specialist role in the military. Is that right?
Correct. And it's a very small pathway. And there's only a few individuals who get to do it. So think of your pyramid of choice and goals. You've got to have a pretty structured mindset to think, right, if that's my goal, to be an adventurous training specialist within the PT Corps in the British Army, you're going to be one of two. Yeah. There isn't, out of the 100,000 people in the force, you're going to be the complete exception to the rule. So, my cohort are Army technicians for the aircraft. That's the career structure you're in. To choose other paths, they're supported, but they're not guaranteed, and they're not the way. So you're dealing with career risk. I remember having to sign some paperwork. If I go and do this PT stuff, physical training, and then adventure training within it, I am foregoing my aircraft career to do so.
Wow. Okay.
It's just one of those there's things you've got to sort of recognize. If you're on a trajectory, on a career path, and I think the same for most outward bound instructors or NOLs or anywhere you come from, you kind of have to make some choices at some stage where this lifestyle may not provide the security and financial aspects that some other jobs could.
Yeah.
So that was definitely an interesting part early on.
That was incredible. So basically two things came out of that, sounds like. One is you had real clarity about what you wanted. You were super specific on the goal. And secondly, you were so committed that you signed away the possibility of more traditional routes that you knew there was a clear progression on. And you knew that you were kind of creating something that had a real opportunity cost, and you really went for it.
Yes. Yeah. So that little hat over the fence, I think I've heard it say over here, which is...
How is it? What is
hat
it?
over the fence.
Hat over the fence,
which is a really good way of putting it. Yeah. And then part of that process is you must qualify as a foundational paddler, a foundational climber, a foundational mountaineer, and then your sports science higher education, so your sports science degree that you study for.
Yeah.
So as soon as I'm in that outdoor field, I'm like, this is definitely the way I want to go. And paddling just sung to me. So, in the water with the blades, any rolling time or any water on the rivers. And the strange thing was, most of the training came back to North Wales. So where I grew up and where my heart and soul was for the sea, almost the foundation of the military outward bound or adventurous training, most of it was in North Wales.
It brought you home.
And I didn't know this. I didn't know this before. So I registered for my mountaineering course, and there I am, so 15 miles away from where I grew up, a place called Indefatigable, over on the Isle of Anglesey. And then the the syllabus offered, heavily on the sea, sailing center, all those amazing things. I'm like, well, here's where I want to come back to. I'm here for a week, and this is my ambition. I'd speak to the instructor, go, well, how do I get to be you? How do I get to do your job? And he goes, and it actually comes around again. The guy, Dave Bunting, goes, well, join the PT corps. I was like, oh, I will. And I did. And, and I was almost like 5 years after that guy then for a few successive tours. And ironically, in 2006, he led an Everest expedition. So this...
In 2006?
Yeah. So he led, a much bigger expedition, three great parts to it. A very, very hard route to do on the West Ridge, Hornby and Couloir. I think 11 people have ever successfully done that route. So this guy, not only has he taught me foundational mountaineering, he's also inspired me for things much later on.
Yeah. Okay. So you basically became a linchpin in this. You created this path for yourself with clarity and commitment at clearly some risk and cost. And it opened the door for you to really kind of get formal training specifically within the military on all these disciplines like mountaineering, sea kayaking, mountain biking, a host of other adventures. And it sounds like you did that, and you led other personnel in the PT part, and then you trained them. And so you had this military container for outdoor recreational skills as cross-training for the military folks.
Yeah, and it was recognized as a way to stretch the soldier. So male and female, any rank, any part of their career, and there was different functionality in it. So you could choose which discipline. So you could choose if you wanted to ski or to climb or to sea kayak or to sail. So fantastic program, really wide, very, very rich in content. Great structure from foundational through to leader through to instructor.
Right.
So it's almost the pyramid scheme of lay the foundations through genuine logbook experience.
Yeah.
Get out there and have some experiences. You and I, if we were aspiring to be instructors, could have on duty time to draw on equipment, pull things in and be really supported to grow that experience sort of year on year.
So lots of professional development and support in that.
Huge amount.
Yeah, terrific. So tell me the story about how you became the 2015 Everest Expedition leader.
So again, self-selected. Go, your hand up and go, well, I've led expeditions now for the last 15, 20 years. I've advised on many other expeditions. I've been almost the altitude specialist in East Africa. All that journey along that took you, that huge gap between, sea to summit youth to, late 30s Everest sort of pedigree. It was a very, and the path that goes in between that just develops and develops and develops, across 3 different continents, your Norwegian winters, all those ingredients that add to the experience to become the guy who can say, hey, I'm going to lead this expedition. Yeah. Then there's a process that you can do. However, there's plenty of barriers to get across. Yeah. From financing, team selection, equipment, it's a small pool of resources. But again, I think the same mindset is there. Well, I'm the one who's going to do this. Yeah. And that was the seed of it.
Incredible fortitude, not unlike a 10 or 11-year-old imagining, mustering up the courage for an open water, open ocean, high latitude swim. So let's talk about, let's dive into the subject of expedition leadership. What's the challenge or what's problematic about expedition leadership?
So I think what I'd learned sort of the 15 years leading to Everest was it's who you get to go with. Sometimes we could choose, and sometimes it'd be chosen for us who the people would be in the team or on the course or on the symposium or whatever that we're leading on would be different. And then the decision making was often, I'm on a rope with this person. We're doing, a little knife edge ridge, be it in Scotland, the Alps, wherever we'd be. Okay, well, their actions really are going to make a difference to my health, my safety, and and the consequences.
Yeah.
So trying to guide and lead and put that experiential teaching in front of people with real risk. So that was the real difference with the military adventure training. The risk is real, and that's what they could then take back to the workplace, to the operational environment. So when they were at risk in other paths, either their own lives or their operational lives, they had the tools emotionally, spiritually, physically to thrive.
Okay, so that's one of the benefits of this program, is that there was transference baked in.
Oh yeah,
and that's
absolutely.
the parallel you would draw in these things, is to help them understand how to do their normal jobs within the
Exactly.
military by using the stress. So it sounds like one of the things that's problematic about expedition leadership is you can't always choose who you're going to be on an expedition with.
Yes.
Either another expedition leader chooses other people, or you wind up on a rope team kind of specifically within an expedition of somebody whose skills may not be exactly who you want. What else? What else is a challenge or problematic about it?
The financial constraint.
Okay.
I think large projects like Everest, it's a physical commitment, financial commitment, health commitment, and then I think it's also a family and circle commitment. You have to. They're kind of almost the pillars around you that you have to address and feed and support.
Yeah. So we can't. So I guess what you're pointing to is that we can't really do it alone.
I couldn't.
Yeah. Is that we need financial support. We need other team members. You might be physically or have the skill set to do something all yourself, or to a certain quality or attention to detail you'd like, but you can't do everything on an expedition.
No.
And you really need others, not only supportive, those folks on the expedition, but the support team that is behind the scenes, like your family and other things.
And that's all baked in. We'd often call it mutual support.
Yeah.
Well, what's your mutual support strategy for this either mini adventure or larger expedition adventure?
Yeah.
That's going to form the development tool that's going to make you a better soldier, better person, better man, better lady, better whatever. It was always, what is the support you have? That was a deliberate thing.
Okay.
So
Those sound like potentially frustrations going in that are a risk you take. What are some things from an expedition leadership perspective that are maybe a little more scary for you?
From a person perspective, I think there was lots of people who applied to come, and I'll be specific for the Everest trip. Lots of people were interested. Lots of people had the ambition to do, which I recognise and I really like. I think it's a great trait to have. However, the journey to get there, and I would definitely put myself on the beginning of the journey. So if you haven't got a few other 8,000 meter peaks under your belt, it's pretty tricky to be the lone leader thing. So if I haven't got it, I think I need to attract people who do. So, and that community is very, very small worldwide, let alone in a military context.
Yeah.
So what I did was find them. So I know what the solution is. I know who they are. So my deliberate act was to find them, invite them, and be open. And that almost that law of attraction in some ways of being open to the possibility of the right people coming, made the right people come. So and by finding them, and that's what kind of worked.
So back to the growth mindset piece that you mentioned earlier. That's so
know what's
essential.
missing. I know what's missing. I need people with heavy Himalayan experience.
Yeah.
Yes, North America, Denali's, Aconcagüas don't cut it. It's a different level. That 6,000 meters, 7,000 meter, 8,000 meter plus, and then that 8,000 meter crowd is there's a handful of people.
Yeah.
So to become one, you need those people. I recognize that you need those people to come with you.
So you, so in many ways, you you understood the risk of failure,
Oh, yeah.
and you knew that it could lead to embarrassment or failure for those people that you did attract. And part of your risk mitigation was to really attract the right people, and you identified who they were and you brought them on. So that was one of the ways that you mitigated a potential concern with that exists, that's inherent to expedition leadership. And what else? What's kind of the worst case scenario? What were you imagining of some of the things that you were preparing people for from an expedition leader's perspective that might eventually happen? Like, what's the thing that you were like, okay, I'm inviting you, and here's the risk. What was that?
Yeah, that was very outwardly developed and planned for this expedition. So you go through like what's called a high risk and remote presentational risk process, where it almost goes through a panel of experts. I've been very lucky to be in the panel for other trips, for some some water, some river trips to the Alps. When I'd been the local guy for 2 years in that area, I had the knowledge that I could then impart to other people how to prepare them for their plan. Mm-hmm. Here's your plan, great, plan's great. What do you need to do to get to be realistic in achieving that plan? Mm-hmm. So I've been on the other side of that committee, and then I have to present through that committee. So it's a really robust risk assessment process, risk mm-hmm. management process, and it's ultimate that it ends up on a go no go decision. It all boils down. So you can put all the people in, you can put all the equipment in, you can put all the experience in, you can put all the conditions you're going to expect, what's the training you've done. Put all those ingredients into the plan, and effectively you end up with a go, no go. And that's so you can have 5 years worth of work in your planning. Mm-hmm. If you can't convince a panel of experts that you're the ones to go there at this time in this place with these conditions expected, it's a no-go.
And this is what you faced in the military, was that type of panel?
Yes.
Yeah. And so for the military also, they didn't want the embarrassment of a failed expedition. No. And they also have a mandate that people can't die needlessly.
Yeah, as a duty of care.
As a duty of care. Yeah. So you knew that you might actually face death potentially on this trip, and that in turn leads to survival guilt, which is something you also don't want as a worst case scenario. So there's a lot of challenges, it sounds like, with this this expedition leader format you were in. Clearly it doesn't have to be that way, those worst case scenarios and those frustrations. What is the opportunity that you saw?
The opportunity is to really develop that decision-making process. To really look at it, it's so ironic that we would almost present, and it was a regular process. It wasn't like you have one shot. It'd go through a successive amount of committee meetings to make it work. So you recognize that slows you down. That's a frustration. You recognize it's a required step. Mm-hmm. So put the work in, get the preparation right. If there's questions, get the answers for them. So don't resist and become obtuse from your own process. Follow it and thrive off it. Mm-hmm. And that was a really good way, a really good mindset to adopt with it. And it took someone much more mature than me to almost say that. And it was one of the team members, Rab, because I was complaining about one of the people on the committee who was a sailor, so a huge sailing background, no mountaineering background, mm-hmm. and you've got to let that ego go. Where, what does he know about this process? And it wasn't that. It was, well, Simon, answer his questions. If you answer his questions, he's got nowhere else to go but to either support you or say no. But if you don't answer his question, you can't get there. I was like, okay, it was a really good sort of life lesson. And mm-hmm. don't keep things and be offended by people's requests or observations or
You had a defensive response.
Yeah,
that you noticed, and it sounds like the advice that you heard was, hey, that's a statement. It doesn't necessarily doesn't have to be a judgment. It could be a challenge or accountability.
Yeah.
But through the lens of defensiveness, it could only be a judgment.
And it was a
it
really
sounds like
good-
you learned
yeah.
not to take it as a judgment.
Yeah, effectively be grateful for the feedback. You know,
Yeah.
and that was definitely a maturing thing. You know, in my 20s and my 30s, you know, getting to that level of emotional maturity took some knocks. It took some, you know, some physical, emotional, and unfortunate other people being hurt, and myself along the way.
Yeah, so
on
other people contributed to that, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So some of the opportunity here that's in the face of those problems with expedition leadership is that you can achieve big goals.
Oh, yeah.
And that it takes the expedition together. It takes multiple perspectives sometimes and multiple skill sets to achieve something that's bigger than ourselves.
Yes.
But that is possible. Okay. You know, why all the effort? What were you hoping to achieve out of this?
It's funny,
Why do this?
I think you have to boil down your goal. I think your goal has to be very finite eventually. So as this is the irony that I mentioned, you know, we'd go and project the risk. You know, we're all about, you know, this kind of expedition was all about the risk planning to a certain degree. And the irony is, the one risk that we didn't think too much of, although we state it and we list it as a risk, natural things happening, you know, huge avalanches, you know.
Acts of God.
Yeah, acts of God. But there's nothing specific like an earthquake and what an earthquake would do to a mountain and then the people within the mountain that you would think of. So although it's a stated risk and it's a known risk and an accepted risk, and that's a really important thing. So looking the team in the eye, looking your you know, in my case, my wife and my young son, in the eye, I say, hey, I'm departing now for this trip I've been on for, you know, 20 odd years of development towards it. Last 5 years, pretty well dedicated to get there. You know what it's cost us financially, physically, and time preparation. You know, I'm going to this trip very selfishly, you know, with the very distinct aim of summiting the mountain, but the very distinct aim of coming back. So, and we put down quite often, you know, summiting is optional. It's a goal, but the coming back is the mandatory. So we must return. We must come back from this mountain. Then somebody really flippantly goes, why go? If you want to come back, if your goal is to come back, don't go.
This is somebody on the expedition, or this is?
Because as you run through the risk so many times and you present and you win people over and sponsorship, you know, it's kind of gains momentum.
As the expedition leader, how did you respond to that?
I was like, that's a really good point. It's a really good point, because if we were so fixated on coming back safe, we shouldn't go. So that's what we couldn't almost reconcile in some ways, because like, well, no, because my aim ultimately is to stand on top of the world, is to be the man who's been on top of Everest, you know, and that's what I had to sort of hold on to and almost believe in all the time. Have that vision and that expectation, and the reality is gonna work. You know, manifest it, and every step you take is one step closer. You know, every little talisman from my ice axe to my watch to my gear, my bag, it's all geared to my goal of stood on top of the world.
And so what did that mean for you? Like, what were you looking to achieve? What's the value of standing on top of the world?
I think it stems from every time I've stepped on a lofty place, every summit, every outcrop, be it as close to the sea or as far away from the sea as possible. It's a feel. It feels good to me. You know, I stand there, I suck it in, literally. I had a habit of, once to connect to the earth, the rock, the snow, or the ice, whatever was up at the top. I used to try and physically connect with it. It was, it's really intangible, but the feeling was brilliant. And the ultimate feeling for me would be on the ultimate mountain, or the ultimate height, because it probably isn't the ultimate mountain, but it's the ultimate height you can get to.
So very personal for you.
Yeah, very personal. I think lots of people can share that. Whatever your goal is, if you can boil it down and really identify, well, why am I doing it? What's it? And for me, it's going to feel good.
And how did you relate to the idea of this being as being viewed successful, or your reputation or accreditation in this field of mountaineering, or within the military, or your potential legacy to your peers or your offspring? Where does that come into play?
Yeah, I think I was almost trying to fight against that in some ways. So I knew my Canadian posting was coming, so we had that sort of factored into the career element of the Everest trip. So my posting was delayed to Canada so I could achieve this goal. That's the support in the career that you get. And deliberately, it's like, well, if I go to Canada, then I don't have to, try and come up with a book deal or kind of do the speaking circuit, do all those things that often come out of a project like this. So there's a deliberate intent to sort of not run away, but to avoid the circus after. And I wasn't interested in that part of it. I got to meet some great people. Wade Davis. I got to speak with him in London. Some David Attenborough was also part of the Explorers Club that we factored in early. Breitling watches being involved at the same time they're involved with the Welsh rugby team. And going to dinner with these real athletes on my birthday in must have been 2012, and they're sponsored by Breitling and I'm sponsored by Breitling, and you feel like an imposter. I felt like an imposter. Yeah. Because you try to reconcile, how does that equate after then? What success can it bring you? Well, that's not what I'm after. I'm not after it's getting me to my ultimate goal, but then after I'm going to deliberately try and avoid it. So I haven't written a book.
So we're clear on some of the problems and both the opportunities with stepping into expedition leadership at such a big scale. And it sounds like the big idea is to really that we have the power to foster and maintain a growth mindset, not only for yourself, but for your team and for your support structures. And that's the role that you really have to play, it sounds like, big picture from an expeditionary mindset and leadership perspective. Let's get down to it a little bit. What is exactly expedition leadership? Let's put it into a little,
I think in the
definition.
In the context of this, in my perspective, it was almost been like the team manager, from an emotional, physical, and sort of responsible self. So being ultimately responsible for the whole team. Call it the CEO, call it the managing director, call it whatever. But you're effectively in the hot seat and responsible for all elements of that trip. For me, I would definitely lean heavily on the other team members. So it'd be very clear what expectation was, but that was the clarity. So, here is what I expect. Here is what we agreed to in this one. So it's almost like, like a contract setting verbally on what it is, but it's the person ultimately responsible for achieving the vision of that project.
All right. So, that was you for this expedition. Yes. You pointed to it a little bit as you talked about risk and earthquakes. You want to share with us just what exactly was this expedition and the outcome of it before we kind of, talk into some other ways about how we can apply those lessons to our lives as sea kayakers?
So it's almost, I can always go a little bit specific with a sense of place is great. This is probably what we're trying to avoid. So probably everyone in the audience, everyone who knows Everest, thing is this is probably what's in your mindset.
This is a picture of like the train of people, like
the Hillary step,
a zoo, at one of the
bottom.
constraints.
I'm sure this guy's got jeans on. It must be to the bottom of the Rongbrook, to the bottom of the ice fall, and then above towards sort of Camp 3, the lines of people. So this to me in preparation, the goal wasn't worth being involved in any of this part of Everest. Yeah. So
the mainstream route.
Yes. So the southern side, the Hillary Step side, I guess. Yeah. So there's 33 known routes currently on Everest. Yeah. So this is the most popular, and I think the one who draws most, in my mind, negative attention.
And the slide you just showed us previous to this was the route you guys actually took.
Yes. So imagine this as the south side.
Yeah.
So as they'll come through, okay, sense to place this one because I didn't go that way. So they'll be on the other side of the mountain. We wanted to come in for the more remote and northern side, almost the original route from Mallory.
Yeah.
So it wasn't lost on us. And this is where Wade Davis came in. So Wade Davis, who wrote a great historical piece on Mallory, and how the First World War kind of pulled that almost like an appetite for adventure from sort of young men and women after the First World War, and he historically captured that so well in the Beckoning Silence, the book he wrote, and hence why we got to route. Mm-hmm. So this route replicates Mallory's route rather than Hillary's route on the southern side. And my good friend Dave Bunting, who did then the West Ridge side, which was that would be it's trip 2, trip 3, trip 4 for me. I wouldn't be at that level of expedition leadership to what he achieved with the West Ridge. So not going to the south, avoid the circus. Going to the north, but not the hardest part of the north, because that would be an unachievable aim. So what is it that fits and what is it that works? And then the northeast ridge did work.
Okay, so you guys chose the northeast ridge, and then just for the context of this, then you experienced one of those acts of God. What happened exactly?
Yes, and if you don't mind, I'll fast forward quite a few slides. I won't go through the team and how we got to the selection piece. And there's a great way, and I will pause that one guy for purely for may he rest in peace. He lost his life years later. He's with us on the mountain, but he died in a climbing accident years later at home in Italy. So thank you, Ted, for all his oxygen and his previous summits on Everest as well. Quite a character. So just rest in peace for Ted. So as we come through, and there's the sense of place, and I think no Himalayan adventure should miss out Kathmandu. Kathmandu is an amazing, vibrant, colourful place that most Himalayan adventures will base out of. And then what happened to them as we were there was terrible. So most people come in through the south, past Amandablan, beautiful areas, through the sort of lush green of the south of Nepal. But we're going to go through the north and definitely trickier sort of Chinese side.
Especially as a military team coming into China.
There was some special bits to go through to get to there.
Okay.
That's probably a different conversation.
That's a different conversation.
So you cross from Nepal into Tibet, and you can see the difference between the Chinese side of concrete and the Nepal not so developed, but completely interesting people and a great place to be. Our Chinese mountain authority agent, so I think
liaison.
I think he's ever been up a mountain in his life, but he was our Agent Orange, as we'd call him. And then the local sort of Nepalese people who would sort of help to get you across the border and into Nepal.
Okay.
So then I think people have a mindset of what Everest should look like, but this is kind of the reality along the way. So through the Chinese villages, through Tibet. So again, the infrastructure there is with concrete. However, the living is still pretty much third world and very poor, with some aspects of Chinese authority around, which helps to a certain degree. And lots of things we do, and then this is why we went vegetarian during a trip, because if the meat around is eating the dirt and you're eating the meat, then that's probably isn't the healthiest choices you could make. But some of the local animals would disagree, and they would help themselves to what was around. So you fast forward all the way through, you trek and get height above these villages, and I'd really like to know, and I don't think I can even Google it, what this looks like now after the event. What's happened right
What was
here.
the event? I think that's not, people aren't necessarily clear what happened in 2015.
Yeah, I think there's only one or two more pictures, and it's probably the easiest way to explain it.
Okay.
So as we get up the mountain, all the things you've got to prepare to go through, normal expeditionary stuff.
Oxygen,
Yeah.
satellite communications, rations.
Blood work that we're doing as part of a bit of a project for health. How it actually transpires on the mountain, all your planning will end up on we used to call it a fag packet, a cigarette thing. What's the actual when you're on the ground? This is physically what we're going to do. Now we've had all the plan, now we're the doing phase. And then as you get up the mountain, the reality of what people have to live with from a local perspective, and what you beautiful parts that you go through. And then it leads to then, sort of end of April, so 5 or 6 weeks in, gone through lots of rotations to feed the camps and to get oxygen higher. Then we're just below the North Col on that northeastern side. Then a huge earthquake hits. So I can't even tell you what time it was, probably 11 o'clock in the morning, about 45 seconds, 50 seconds. And the best way I can describe it is if there was 30 people in a room and it's a wooden floor and everybody's jumping up and down at the same time. So knowing you're on a solid object, but
this is what the mountain felt like.
Yeah, so yeah. I know I'm on probably 100 meters of ice and snow in this, in this glaciated valley, and it's solid ice. And to be on it and to shake like jelly for 45, 50 seconds, and then you hear the ice falls and the rock falls and stuff coming past your tent as the rocks kind of came down. And all I'm thinking is avalanche. I'm having experienced avalanches and been part of my progression. And the year before, the horrendous 2014 avalanche incident was on the south side again, thinking it's an avalanche, it's huge. But then what came clear after about a minute or two and the ground starts to stop shaking is, well, this is a huge earthquake. Is it localized to this side? And within minutes, hearing over the radios, getting different camps talking back, the scale starts to grow. So minute 1, minute 2, minute 3, minute 4, you're hearing all the panic effectively that's going on. And I think one of the things I'm really proud of with in about 20 minutes of that first earthquake and then subsequent shocks, we kind of knew just by hearing that there's either people missing or there's miscommunication or communications down between camps on the mountain, we kind of knew that we're no longer on a summit attempt. This is now, at best, a rescue attempt of whatever's left. Yeah. So I think within 20 minutes, that 25 years of goal setting, 5 years of project momentum, then 20 minutes, we were able to collapse it really quickly into, okay, what's the next best right thing we can do?
So in a minute, everything changed, and your entire focus and objective was had to be really recalibrated.
Yeah. So within 20 minutes, we knew, we decided pretty quickly, and I'm really proud of that. Pretty quickly, we decided, okay, it's no longer a summit attempt. This is now, what can we do to be of effect in a positive way? So can we rescue people? We had a doctor, we had a pilot, we had all had high altitude, sort of medical experience. What can we do to help? Who can we move? What can we flow? Should we be here? Should we be in Kathmandu? Should we be wherever we can be? And then, days and days and days of stuck up the mountain. But, we've got provisions for 3 more weeks of up and down. So we're in a good place. So take stock, take perspective. We're fit, we're healthy. We were able to get our teams to contact their loved ones at home. So our Sherpas and some cooks around. And we run up with like a $15,000 sat phone bill within the first 4 hours. Phone home to the people who couldn't. Yeah. But it was the right thing to do. So that was the benefit. What became really clear within the next 24 hours was at least 19 people were missing on the south side. We knew of another team of military people on the south side, and their camp was split. So now we have a focus for people we know, people that we admired and trained with along the way, and also knowing that the losses of the people that we were with. We then start to hear about the villages and Kathmandu and all the Nepalese sort of impact. And the numbers are sort of getting out to sort of 8,000, 9,000 people perished.
Yeah, and I think there's a Netflix series that really unpacks the sort of big picture of what happened from within the country and on the mountain, that really kind of launches into these details that really spells that out. It was a significant event, and so it sounds like the overall goal with practicing expedition leadership is precisely for a moment like this, that allows you to be so well prepared for your primary objective that through that clarity, it also allowed you to pivot instantly to a completely different mission, a completely different objective. And so the power of expedition leadership was really lived in that moment for you all. You were able to be effective as a support team. You were able to very deliberately regather and pivot as an organization, as a team, and you had the support systems in place to enable you to really manage effectively something that was such a far-flung contingency that it wasn't really kind of on the documented list, but it was a checkbox in the early stages.
It literally was a checkbox, and I think that's really crucial, because we do that all the time. We check a risk box in our planning. You know, boil that down, then how often are you actually going, am I really thinking about what the risk is? And you know, we'd have a process of risk assessment, for most days and activities. And
so let's bring this conversation into ways that we can develop as expedition leaders. What are some things that you offer to us as expedition leaders on trips that may or not are not as lofty, maybe as an Everest expedition within a military context? Crossing a border into China, that we can apply to everyday backyard or weekend or multi-week expeditions with a team that we're putting together or supporting with a team that somebody else is leading.
Yeah, I think one of the very strict ways I heard it, and it did stick with me, and the reason it stuck with me is because almost from an emotional perspective, it was always the deserve to be there. And I was like, ooh, that's a really deep. What do you mean by that?
So step into the belief that you deserve to be there, so you don't have that imposter syndrome like you were talking about.
So I think it boils down to, let's be specific. If you want to do a crossing, you've got a certain amount of wind, you've got a certain amount of people, you've got a certain amount of craft.
So show up with the skill set that really positively contributes in every single action.
And then there's a but, I think, there's an and. So how do you get to know you can be there without micro adventures to get there? So I'll be specific. So the team that we had, although I drew to the 8,000 meter people, I also brought along the next set of 8,000 people. So these people that were in the 5,000 and 6,000 meter category, we're going to become these people on that trip.
I see.
So it's almost a growth mindset, I think. So
I see.
So yes, deserve to be there, but you'll have, if you've got mutual support with the team that you have, that's so strong, and it's often intangible how strong people can turn up when things go bad.
So if I break that down a little bit, some of the things you're offering as ways we can develop in our expedition leadership is always deserve to be there, meaning that show up with a presence and a skill set and vocalize that. Yeah.
A spare paddle. Yeah. That's deserving to be there, because you're making the right choices before you're adventuring into something.
And secondary to that is really know yourself within the progression and think about how to also develop leaders through the process.
Yeah, bring people through.
So you not only do you have redundancy, but you also have this longer vision of being able to develop as you go. Okay, what else? What are some other kind of key things we want to adopt as ways that we can develop our expedition leadership?
The right equipment. I think building up, and try and test your things from your base layers to your paddle, how you interact, how it feels, try and test it. Doing a big trip with something that's never been out with you, either you've done really good research on how that works and how other people have exploited it to work really well in your plan. So don't go with things that are too raw or too new.
So everything should be tried and tested.
To a certain degree,
It
It can be a new version of something, or your next version of something, your next 2.0 of what it is.
Okay. This kind of, I've heard you speak before about the need to really kind of break it down to the what, who, how, and when.
Yeah.
And that's really it falls under that in terms of knowing your gear, being practiced with it. And so that anything that happens on an expedition, in no way are you trying something out for as a novice in that way. Okay. What else?
In the people you're with, bring them through, and having a mindset of let the conditions dictate. So if the plan isn't going to plan, so it's always a plan, and it wasn't a joke, but it was a long-standing saying in the military: a plan does not last first contact with the enemy. The enemy doesn't know what your plan is, so they're not going to do what your plan is. They'll do whatever their plan is. So it doesn't last first contact. And we would use the same in the outdoor industry as well. We'd go, well, your conditions plan will not last until you meet the conditions.
Sure.
So having that flexibility ingrained, okay, what's my plan A? What's my plan B? What's plan C? What's the evacuation route? Okay, if that goes wrong, I'll go this way.
So have lots of contingencies.
Yeah, lots of contingencies.
Simon, in our last 2 minutes here, I want to ask you a question. And then how do you think about the decision-making process in the context of expedition leadership?
I think I heard it better years later. It was actually the railway. The railway taught me it. Have the mirror test.
The mirror test, what is that?
So can you look at yourself in the mirror after? So the decisions you make and the decisions you made, as you reflect on them and you look back, are you proud of it and are you happy with it? Would you talk about it in an open sense? And if not, is that the right decision to make?
I see. So some degree of objectivity.
Yeah, mirror test
of that. Got it. Okay. So it's that's rich, Simon. Thank you. So if I could summarize some of the lessons and the points to remember out of this unpacking, if you will, of expedition leadership. Some of the things that I've made notes here. One is really to practice big thinking.
Yeah.
Is to think about things that are otherwise seemingly unachievable, just as an exercise, consistently, and not write it off until it's as impossible until you've really kind of gone down the process of really fully understanding it. And so part of that is the next thing is get really clear about your goals, like you did in terms of choosing this path with the military. The third thing, it sounds like, is really identifying those steps toward those goals and looking at what's incrementally achievable along the way.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the big takeaway that you've really emphasized here is risk planning, is really setting adoption criteria and setting those choice points along the way so they're known and anticipated. And the extent of pre-planning in your decision-making models, it sounds like was critical to that. And the military structure really helped you with that, because that's very normal in that scenario. Whereas in our backyard expeditions, those decision-making models may not be as clear. So really leaning into those, it sounds like, would be helpful.
Yeah.
And it sounds like where the magic is in all this that you've consistently touched on is the importance of growth mindset in the most challenging times.
Yeah.
Underscores every single bit of it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let me thank you for that, Simon. Did I get that right?
I think so. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. In the last minute here, how do we transfer, if you could say in one quick sentence, how do we transfer this practice of expeditionary leadership or leadership to our regular sea kayak patterns? What's the one thing that we might really want to just lean into to transfer this skill that you shared with us today into our next paddle?
Yeah, I think going back to the why are you there? And for me, it was always about the joy. So I think take the joy with you, and all the planning, all the gear, all the little bits. It's never a chore. It's part of the journey, and it's enjoy it. And I think we do. I think we're all in this industry and in this passionate, our craft and our thing is because we enjoy it.
Yeah.
So I think remember that.
So focus on the happiness factor.
Definitely.
Awesome.
Definitely.
Simon, thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you for your leadership at TRAK and bringing your life of expeditionary leadership skills to this role and to this company. If people want to learn more about you and to continue to get your insight as paddlers and as members of our TRAK community, I understand that you'll be contributing to the Facebook page that TRAK maintains, so we can find you there a little bit. But it sounds like a more direct way is simon@trakkayaks.com.
Much better way.
So, yeah.
And I'm sorry for everybody who I know I'm behind and emailing back for other things as well. So, but yeah, add to that way in. That's probably the easiest.
Okay.
Email me, pick up the phone, talk to me, and we'll go from there. And eventually, we can talk and discuss things on a paddle. I had a great paddle with one of our local customers down in Victoria, Brad, who will be out there. Is a really good way of reconciling some of this, because it's not lost on me that we went to climb a mountain. To one of the aims was develop combat stress as a philosophy, and PTSD as a part of your journey of military life, and then a huge incident happens that could potentially give most people PTSD.
Yeah.
So there's the irony again of things. So
good.
So thank you, Brad, for helping me reconcile some of this before we have this kind of talk.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you, Simon, and thanks for all of you who tuned in. Also want to especially thank Bruce Rickman and Pitt Meadows for their question on how we can go the extra mile for within a leadership role. It sounds like you've answered that in spades. And feel free to reach out to Simon at trakkayaks.com if you have any additional questions or comments, and really want to appreciate everyone's comments in the chat room, and whether you're watching this live or in a recorded format, then please feel free to reach out to Simon. So thank you once again. Thanks for folks in the background here, Jonathan behind the scenes moderating, and I think Nolan and Jason, who are on channel as well, moderating the chat room. And we invite you to join us for the next 3 steps to kayaking. Have a great rest of your day, and have a great paddle.